Chapter 1. The Extra Tent. 4 friends and I went camping beside a remote lake. We arrived before sunset and set up 4 tents. 2 people shared the largest one, while the rest of us slept separately. Before going to bed, we placed the tents in a semicircle facing the fire. When I woke shortly after 3, there were 5 tents. The new tent stood between mine and the lake. It was small, dark green, and appeared old. Nobody had been awake long enough to set it up without making noise. I woke the others. None of them recognized it. We called out, but nobody answered. One friend opened the entrance. Inside were 5 sleeping bags arranged in a circle. Each sleeping bag contained personal items belonging to one of us. My watch was inside the first. Another friend found her phone in the second, although she was holding the same phone in her hand. The final sleeping bag contained a camera. We switched it on. The camera held photographs of our campsite taken throughout the night. The earliest showed us sitting beside the fire. Later, photographs showed us entering our tents. The final image showed all 5 of us asleep inside the green tent. We returned to our own tents, gathered our equipment, and prepared to leave. The path towards the car park had disappeared. Every direction led back to the lake. We walked for almost an hour before reaching the campsite again. The green tent was gone. In its place, 5 people stood facing the water. They wore our clothes. When one of them began turning around, we ran into the forest. We reached the car park shortly after sunrise. Park rangers returned with us, but they found only 4 tents. Everything inside them was wet, as if it had been submerged underwater. The camera was never found. Several weeks later, one friend received a photograph in the mail. It showed the green tent beside the lake. 5 figures were standing outside. 4 were facing the camera. The 5th was still looking towards the water. Chapter 2. The Whistling Across the Lake. My father took me camping when I was 14. We stayed beside a large mountain lake with no other campsites nearby. On the first night, we heard someone whistling from the opposite shore. The tune contained 3 short notes, followed by 1 long note. My father whistled back. The sound stopped immediately. Several minutes later, it returned from somewhere much closer. My father told me it was probably another camper in a boat. There were no lights on the water. At midnight, the whistle came from the trees behind our tent. Same 3 short notes. Same long note, my father shouted, that we knew someone was there. A voice answered from the darkness. It sounded exactly like me. It said, "Dad, come help me." I was standing beside him. We entered the tent, locked the car keys inside with us, and remained quiet. The voice moved around the campsite. Sometimes it sounded like me. Sometimes it sounded like my father. At approximately 2, it began speaking in my mother's voice. She was hundreds of kilometers away. It asked us to open the tent. My father held one hand over my mouth to stop me from answering. The voices continued until sunrise. When we left the tent, their footprints surrounded our campsite. They began at the water and circled us repeatedly. No footprints led back to the lake. We packed immediately. Before leaving, my father found a wet backpack beside the shoreline. Inside was a wallet belonging to a man who had disappeared while camping at the lake 9 years earlier. Police searched the area but found nothing. My father never took me camping again. Years later, he admitted that something else happened that night. While I slept briefly before sunrise, the whistling returned. This time, it came from inside our tent. My father opened his eyes and saw me sitting. Upright, I was staring at him. Then I whistled. The same 4 notes. I have no memory of doing it. My father said the footprints outside were not what frightened him most. What frightened him was that after I whistled, something beneath the lake whistled back. Chapter 3. The Trail Register. My sister went hiking alone through a protected forest. At the entrance, Hikers were required to sign a register with their name, planned route, and expected return time. When my sister opened the book, her name was already inside. It had been written on the previous page. The entry stated that she had begun the trail 3 days earlier. The return column remained empty. My sister assumed another hiker shared her name. Then she noticed the handwriting. It was hers. The listed emergency contact was also correct. She photographed the page and continued along the trail. After several hours, she found an abandoned ranger shelter not shown on her map. A handwritten notice was attached to the door. If you have already signed out, do not enter. My sister had not signed out. She entered. The shelter contained a bed, radio, and another trail register. This book was filled entirely with her name. Hundreds of entries recorded different arrival and departure times. Some stated that she had returned safely. Others contained notes such as lost near the river, did not return, still inside the shelter. Radio switched on. A woman's voice repeated my sister's name and asked for her location. The voice belonged to my sister. She answered. The radio version of her immediately said, "Don't tell it where you are." Something knocked on the shelter. There were 3 slow knocks. Then my sister's voice called from outside, asking to be let in. She escaped through a rear window and followed the trail back towards the entrance. For the next hour, she heard someone matching her pace in the trees. Whenever she stopped, it stopped. She reached the trail. Register shortly before dark. A new entry had appeared. Beneath her original signature, it said she had returned safely at 6:42. The time was only 6:37. My sister left the forest at 6:41. She crossed the boundary. Someone behind her began running. She reached the car before her watch changed to 6:42. The forest became completely silent. When she checked the photograph of the original register, the page had changed. Her name was gone. In its place was a message written in her handwriting. "You left 1 minute too early." My sister has never returned to that forest, but every year on the same date, she receives an alert on her phone at 6:42 p.m. It says, "Your hike is still in progress.